recording is going to be on here in a second. There we go. Alrighty, so good afternoon, good morning. This is David Perlman with Microsoft, and we also have our friends from Forsyte Technologies. I am the Director for Education Solutions at Microsoft. Along with us, we have from Microsoft, Kurt, who is a Technical Account Manager. Wave hi, Kurt. Hey, Kurt. We also have a bunch of other folks that are going to be joining us from the Forsyte team. Greg Katz.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Greg. You may if you lean too far back, Greg, you wind up getting really dark in the shadow. So just lean front, okay, unless it's a really good tan that you're working on these days. So Greg Katz, I worked with for about, I don't know, 20 odd years at Microsoft, and he is also part of the 20 years. Man, we were a lot younger then. Forsyte team, and then we also have, I think, is Jeremy with us as well?
I'm here. Yes, David. Thank you.
Awesome. And so it's really critical, I think, before we turn it over to the Forsyte team. Forsyte team's been working with a lot of SUNY schools on the Strategic Identity Initiative. The team's been working really hard, both independently with schools across SUNY as well as at a more, we'll just say a holistic level, right? Lots of challenging things going on, right? Whether it be trying to figure out accessibility, and inclusion, or dealing with, just some of the new paradigms that we're dealing with, right? Whether school will be in session in fall or not, right? I've been challenging my daughter who goes to SUNY Geneseo because she wants to get an apartment. I'm like, listen, kiddo, I'm not paying for an apartment if you're not going to be there in the fall. So we did a 50-50 split. If she games it wrong, she's going to owe me money for the first semester. So I kind of like that. Without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to, is there anybody that I missed from your side, Greg?
I don't think so. I think it's, Stephanie is on board today. So,
all right.
Stephanie, you want to do a quick introduction? And hello.
Hi. Sure. Hi, I'm Stephanie Dunn, and I run the marketing for Forsyte IT Solutions. So thanks for having me here.
This will count. I can cancel my later call with you today. So anyways, thank you very much, Forsyte team. Greg, I'll turn it over to you, and really appreciate everybody's time today. And if you have questions, I think we'll leave some time at the end for questions as well. Correct, Greg?
Yeah, we'll have plenty of time, I think, for questions. And we can always, just give David a hard time. I'm sure you guys all know David. We'll give him a hard time at the end of the call as well. I turned my video off. I'm going to be doing some desktop sharing, and it looked like the video was a little dark. So I'm going to go ahead and go with my non-COVID type of experience and not show my video this morning. But today, what David asked us to come in and talk to you, to the team about, really two topics, data loss prevention and also eDiscovery in respect of Microsoft 365. And what we'll be talking about is what's available for you, through the A3 and A5 licensing, and predominantly in eDiscovery, we'll be talking about it as it reflects on the A5 licensing. We'll do a quick overview of Zero Trust for those who haven't heard of Zero Trust, and go through where we're looking at the future technology of security and how it plays into the overall experience for all of our clients. In particular today, I think one of the big areas is going to be talking about information protection. So what do we have for information protection through Microsoft security portfolio? And I want to talk about data classification and then also talk about data loss prevention. I'll do a review of the Security and Compliance Center, and then we'll shift over after data loss prevention to talk about eDiscovery. And I'll go through both a core, what's called a core eDiscovery, which is your typical what we've seen for years with eDiscovery. And then we'll go through the advanced eDiscovery. And this one is more geared toward, looking at a full portfolio for eDiscovery. And then, as David mentioned, we'll go through some Q&A. But if there are questions throughout the presentation, let me know, and we'll go ahead and accommodate those questions as we see them. So one of the things that Microsoft has been investing through the last few years is around Zero Trust. looking at what we can do to not only look at controlling, different vectors, but what's your response and how do you enforce those policies as you look at zero trust? So it's looking at where's the signaling coming from? What are the decisions that we need to make? And for instance, I'll give you a scenario. This morning, I forgot to go ahead and escalate my privileges to turn on privileged identity management, and I couldn't get into the compliance manager because I didn't have the rights. So it's that conditional access, or looking at what do we need to do based on what that person needs to perform, and how do we make those decisions, and then how do we enforce those policies. And outside the realm of this, there's a lot of other pieces of zero trust. So zero trust, we talk about conditional access. Two things. One, we're using Cloud Connect with SUNY. We're doing Azure Active Directory B2B. We're also doing Azure Active Directory and looking at that conditional access. So across this realm, you have what's your device risk and what's a user risk in the environment. And the users, what we want to look at is the identity themselves. Is there a leak credential that we have? Is there something that we need to look at for those user threats, and looking at things like MFA, or looking at what we do as far as desktop protection using Hello for Business. And then there's also what do we have as far as our device management, and whether we're talking about endpoint protection with Defender, or we're looking at a partner MDM, or looking at Intune, it's making sure that that device isn't at risk for the organization as well. So one, we look at the identity, and the other, we're looking at that device management. And then we're going to, dictate a policy and a posturing for that. And we can say, for access to that particular set of assets at SUNY, what we're going to have to do is provide MFA. So now you'll be prompted for additional credentials so you can go ahead and access that particular area. And then there's also remediation. So looking at self-service password reset, or, how are we going to go ahead and ensure that that person had something that was compromised and we can get them back into a working situation. And then on the far right, what we have are all the tools that we have looking at what can they look at, or what can they do once they have that policy applied to them. So if we're looking at modern applications, we can look at cloud app security and apply different rules. We can also, with a CAS or cloud app security, take a look at unsanctioned applications in the environment. These are ones that we want to block. We want to provide a policy and block those pieces. And then one of the pieces that we're going to talk about today is the Azure Information Protection, or unified clients that we have, that provides you this capability of providing a labeling and a protection. And the best thing about this, and coming from a guy that I ran Exchange for a number of years, and then looked at Exchange privacy templates, through the years. And it was great when it was inside Microsoft's realm, inside your organization. But what's great about the Azure Information Protection is the protection that you get inside and outside of the organization, with hundreds of document types that are supported for AIP with the unified client. So information protection, we're going to dive in deeper here. It's really about this classification of the documentation. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and do a quick sharing session here. And I've opened up the Security and Compliance Center for Microsoft. And the first thing that I'm looking at is a secure score. And you can see this is one, if you think about gamification, this is a way of looking at, what's my overall score? How can I improve my score? And this one I can say, okay, well, we haven't implemented this piece. This one, has a weighted level of this, and it's going to increase our overall score. But it's also going to increase your overall posturing, what you have within the organization. So I think it's a great one to look at as far as looking at, here are the things I need to do in improvement actions. So I know I need to go ahead and take care of this, and I'll assign that to someone so they can go ahead and take a look at that. Okay. So let's talk about classifications. And the first thing I'll do is look at the sensitivity info types. And these are, many of them that come out of the box, but you can also create your own type. So you see there's a Social Security one, and you can go ahead and test the type if you want. This one's built in, so it's built with the SSN. But say I wanted to create a new type. I can go ahead and say this is SUNY. This is for SUNY demo. Click on next. And what's the element? What do I want to go ahead and take a look at? So I can go ahead and say I want to detect for regular expression. I've got a dictionary that I've uploaded. I can take a look at that. In this case, I'm just going to say SUNY. What's the confidence level, and what's the character proximity do I want to have? So these are the things that we want to go ahead and test for and take a look at, these elements as we push it forward. So I just created a sensitivity label or a sensitivity info type, but I haven't created a label and I haven't created anything in order to go ahead and utilize this. And I don't want to test it right now, but testing, I can upload a document, and with that document, go ahead and see if it finds any instances of SUNY as a reference as that keyword. So here you can see I've done this before with, I think I did ARN code. And with ARN code, I was just looking at a specific keyword type for that and testing that type. So sensitivity labels are using that sensitivity info types. And what we can do is do an auto labeling. And I'll just take a look at this one that we have right now. And everything is set up so that when you click on it, you can go ahead and edit each one of these items within the portal. So in this case, I'm going to edit this, take a look at it. This is top secret. It's for only FIT information, Forsyte information. What do I want to do with this? Do I want to encrypt automatically? This is not something that's message flow related. This is something that is inherently with the document as the classification is applied to that document. So here I can assign the permission now, or I can let the end user apply the labels. My experience is that when we've done classification labels in the past, if you leave it up to the end user as the only way to do this, then you will have no classification within your organization. So what you can do, and I'll talk about trainable classifiers in a few minutes, but you can train based on information in your environment. So I usually say I'm going to assign these policies, and then is there an expiration date on this sensitivity type? You might want the sensitivity type rolled out and only used for the next 6 months during this project. So, and do you want to automatically apply it, or do you want it applied after a certain period of time? So I'm going to say it never expires, and I am going to allow offline access for this for up to 7 days. After that, then it gets revoked. Then who has the access to this? I can say any of the users that I have. I can choose email users, authenticated groups, or add users outside my organization. Right? So if I added those users that were outside the organization, what permissions do I want to do with that person? So I can give them reviewer rights. I could give them whatever I need to as far as the encryption policies. So it does go into in information protection where you want to go ahead and define what those business workflows are. But once you've identified that, it's a very quick operation to go ahead and create the sensitivity labels. So here, what do I want for a watermark? I'm just going to go ahead and label this Sunni. Black diagonal, that's fine. I'm not going to go ahead and customize any headers. I'll take that off. And then what is the content for this? You know, I said we could do keyword, but in this case, what I did do in the past is I did it by credit card number. Right? And I can add additional sensitivity info types. The other one that you have is I can add trainable ones. So let's talk about trainable classifiers. And this one might be new to a lot of people, even you know, the Microsoft team that have been using this for a while. And what Microsoft has done is use machine learning to create trainable classifiers. So in this case, what I can do, and this could be used in, you know, not only looking at offensive language and profanity, but maybe you're looking at bullying within the school, and I can go ahead and use a number of these vectors and add that as a labeling type, you know, either for this or for retention policies, and taking a look at that. And you can add your own trainable classifiers. So, you know, this is still, I believe, in preview, and David, you can go ahead and check on it, but I think it's still in preview. But you'll be able to let it scour through your SharePoint libraries, through your teams, and provide you with a classifier that you can go ahead and use that's germane to your environment. So it's a great new tool that you have at your disposal when you're looking at how do I want to go ahead and do this. So I'm going to go ahead, and I don't need resumes, I don't need source code, but maybe I want these in there, and I could go ahead and add those credit card as well as this. Not exactly the best sensitivity label policy, but you know, maybe one of the things I want to do is this one is just going to be around the offensive language. So then I'm going to go ahead and label this, display a message, or I don't have to display that message. And then I can go ahead and submit that. So once you've done that, you know, one of the things you've done is you set up auto labeling for those applications. So now what you'll see, you know, the top secret one is the one that we just edited. But if I look at Word documents, and what I'll do is just pull up a Word document here, just so you would see what it looks like on the end user side. The unified label, what it allows me to do is I can sit here for this one, and as an end user, I can change it. But if this had information, I'll give you an example that when I was doing some testing with a client a few weeks ago, I did a label for a credit card number. And for testing, you know, it's not a 16-character, you know, arbitrary number. There's actually a computational algorithm that it uses for that sensitivity type. So it has to be an actual number or something that calculates to a Visa code or to a MasterCard code. And with that, once you do it, then it'll automatically apply that label. The other thing when it comes to labeling, and this is just you know, from experience, you apply that label, it takes up to 72 hours for that label to go into effect. So one of the things that you want to take a look at is what's the scope, and making sure, so if we go back and take a look at the scope, I believe I only have it set for me on the scope, right? So these are the people and the specific users and groups, but I would do a small group of users to apply that policy to begin with, and then after the fact, go ahead and extend that out to the entire organization or to the business units within the school that you want to go ahead and utilize. The other thing that you can do is set up retention labels. And with these retention labels, go ahead and apply policies. So Wesley did one here. It was just based on legal and payroll. And there's a 7-year retention that's set up for these. And auto apply this label, I can go ahead and say, what are the conditions that I want to use for this? Apply it that it contains sensitive info, apply with specific words and phrases, or by a trainable classifier that we might have in the system. What's interesting about this too is I can go ahead and create with templates. So with the templates, I can look at, for instance, a medical and health and say, I wanted to go ahead and do one that's a HIPAA policy. Sorry, I've got water being splashed behind me on the wall. They're power washing outside. They just came by the window here. So that's the classification piece.
Craig, I can send all the content. That's
what's that?
I think I'll go back on mute.
Okay. I'm just trying to pull the presentation back up. There we go. So we start looking at those classifications. We look at how we want to protect and how we want to monitor. The other great thing that you can do is, without putting mailboxes on hold, I can search for the content and search for, what's been classified. Am I getting false positives? What am I creating the right policies within the organization? And the one best practice I've seen is, you go with a simplicity model with the KISS method, and you do something that's very simple, only a couple policies, apply that, look to see, over the next, few weeks what that policy enablement looks like. So it's not something that you do overnight, but it's definitely, something you'll see the overall benefit very quickly from. So when we do the information protection, it can be from any client or from any of these types of repositories that we're looking at. So if you're looking at Salesforce or Exchange or SharePoint, Teams, Yammer, I can have access to that content. And then based on that unified policy, that policy is distributed onto the particular content that you have. So it'll apply to that document type. It could be an Adobe PDF. It could be a Word document. All those pieces will go into play when we're taking a look at the policy. Once we set up the security controls and we implement the policy, then it's looking at, the things that we saw in Zero Trust. Is the system in compliance? So did we do anything with Intune and provide a policy for the mobile devices? Is the endpoint compromised? So we can look at Defender ATP to see if it's compromised. Looking at the user account itself with ATP. And then Azure Active Directory, do they still have access? Is this something that we need them to have access to? And then they can look at everything with the Security Center. And then finally, you can also use MCAS or Cloud App Security and provide policies based on that. And I mentioned the sanctioned and unsanctioned applications, but there are a number of policies you can go ahead and look at what the alerts are and create a policy on that. And the one I typically use is one of my partners here, Chris Irwin. He had a impossible travel situation on the Cloud App Security. And the reason being is he went on vacation, but when he went on vacation, he decided to do some email while he was there, work related. So within a 2-hour period, it showed that he was in Costa Rica and in North Carolina. So that didn't bode well with the system. And I could have easily just gone and created a policy based on that information. So it uses security graph, and then it recommends, whether we use MFA, whether we use password change, policies provide access to the system. On the information protection, it's a similar type of process, but we're looking at the classification of the data. Is it does it have a protection label? If it does, you saw in the wizard, there's a access that's granted or only for a period of time. So is there a revocation that we need to look at for that particular policy? So it's the first thing it's going to look at, has it been revoked already? Is there conditional access to that content? Is it something that we should consider to do conditional access and provide MFA access in order to guarantee access to it? And then it comes, so that's opening data and looking at Azure information protection, so the documents itself. But the other part is the data loss prevention. Is there sensitive content? Do we have a data classification set that we've provided? And then where do these policies come from? And then you can check the DLP policies and look at the overall system. So these two areas, just looking at information protection and data loss prevention, are the two areas that give you, this 1-2 punch when it comes to what do I want to do with the IT governance within my organization. So, I would definitely look at, going through the journey on this and setting up, a couple policies for information protection and auto labeling, and looking at the content search, how many were applied, and looking at the analytics that are provided by Microsoft in order to take a look at that information. So what does DLP cover? And I mentioned that there's multiple repositories. It covers teams, and one of the new things that it's covering, it's in preview, is team conversations, channel conversations, Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, and then obviously within the Office desktop applications like we were talking about. You have your policy tips, but you can also block the sharing of information. And what I didn't show in that wizard is there you can allow for user overrides. Or if the content is in question, you can go ahead and have a notification email to a custodial type of resource. So with DLP, you can, one, reduce the overall risk. Search through all the sensitive content. You notice it was content that you create based on your dictionary, based on your expressions, or based on just simple keywords. And then there's also data classification if you're looking at profanity, or you wanted to look at information about your organization that you haven't been able to classify yet. Let the AI engine do that.
I apologize.
Sure.
A3 versus A5, just let's call out those distinctions.
Is that you, David, or?
Yes, this is David Perlman.
Okay, then you can call him out, David.
Okay, I'll wait till we get to the end of the
okay.
discussion.
Sure, and I think it's important for us to go ahead and call out those distinctions, because there is, there's a baseline that you have with A3, and then there's more, and we're talking about the full security piece with Microsoft 365. So we definitely want to, pull up a slide at the end that shows the differences between them. Okay, and then finally we look at the report, so we can start looking at false positives. What does that look like? What can we do with those particular pieces? Information protection is about anywhere that you're at. To me, this was the game changer. It was not only inside my organization, but outside my organization. So I can set up my data loss prevention policies. I can set up my information protection policies and have them applied across the board. I can use an AIP scanner to scan my content on premises as well. And then outside of the realm of this, I can use the Microsoft Cloud App Security to search for content there as well. So this is why it's important, but this is one aspect of what we're talking about today, which is volume control. The other thing is when we get to eDiscovery is looking at what is the relevance and with case disposition, where do we take that information? What do we do with the information there? Okay. So MCAS and Defender are part of, and I'm sorry it says M5, but A5. But we'll have a slide that goes through this information at the end. And the life cycle information, we can provide that insight analysis that's right there within the portal as well. So without further ado, I'll just jump into, I labeled this one Advanced eDiscovery, but what I'll do is I'll go over the overall eDiscovery story and then show the advanced eDiscovery capabilities that you have within Microsoft 365. And, you know, I can say that over the years, this is one investment that continues to be one that the entire Microsoft team is looking at. And it's because at first there was, you know, well, if you were the IT person, you could go ahead and do an eDiscovery. And that doesn't make sense if the IT person is the one in question. And the bigger your organization or the more defined your organization is, you'll have custodians. And looking at the custodians, they need to have access without it being a you know, very IT intensive type of operation. This needs to be something they have the rights to. They can go end to end, you know, from pulling all the information or putting mailboxes on hold to looking at the data sets and redacting information and providing everything to a presentation mode that makes it available for the litigation case and they can take to court. So it's been a huge investment that the Microsoft team has been focused on. We're going to focus on the right with the advanced security and that end-to-end solution. And it does provide now eDiscovery through the collaboration workspaces. So if you're using Teams or using Yammer, we can crawl through that information. And again, it's about the custodial management, you know, making sure that this is in the hands of the people that need, you know, this is my legal assistant, right? They're going to be the ones working on that information. The other thing is we want to do more with eDiscovery right there within Microsoft 365. And what you've seen in the past is, you know, here's a good enough story with eDiscovery, and then here's the 15 partners you can use to go ahead and extend that story. And what you have at that point is you've got repositories that are at Microsoft. They could be on-prem. They could be in all of these different systems. And then you've got to look at the security and protection of all those systems as well. So here it's become more cost effective. It's a better efficiency, and we have the overall security metric for this. The other thing is, and I've seen this, you know, over and over. So say Jeremy, I did a hold on his mailbox. And you know, 3 people he was working with, I needed to put hold and do some search sets. Well, in the past, if you had to do that and do an export, you're basically exporting the entire mailbox. And then you've got to comb through it and, you know, take out yourself the relevant information. What you have now is a complete dashboard to be able to search through that information, you know, make annotations, only select the content that you want that's relevant to that case, and then move that forward. So this includes information that's in Microsoft 365, but also there's hundreds of other different file types, and it's actually on Microsoft's site under Advanced eDiscovery, all the different types of file types that are available for you. So this is an electronic discovery reference model. And, you know, we were talking about volume and reference, and what Microsoft has done is made investments in all of these areas. So information protection and governance that we talked about already, you know, through that information governance. Then there's the basic eDiscovery that you have in Microsoft 365. This allows you to identify what is that source information, do preservation, and just do collection on that. So it doesn't allow you to go into the information as you'll see in advanced eDiscovery. Advanced eDiscovery is more about, I need to do analysis and deep insights on this information and take 1,000 emails, for instance, and bring that down to 5 relevant emails and redact the information or point out this particular piece of information for the litigation. Provide that out to a production and presentation through, and we use Azure Blob Storage to go ahead and do that presentation.
So Greg, if you just pause there.
Sure.
The eDiscovery in Microsoft 365 is the it's a good graphic, is the A3 portion of it. Advanced eDiscovery is part of A5, or you can purchase, there's an advanced compliance SKU as well that you can purchase as a standalone.
Yeah, and it's a big differentiator is looking at this, because I think when you look at it, David, you've got to look at what are the existing tools that are being used across SUNY.
Agreed.
Right? And do I have that opportunity to go ahead and phase that out and just use the advanced eDiscovery in Microsoft 365?
Yeah, and so we found in our case, right, a lot of the SUNY schools are already on A3, although a significant chunk do have A5. Trying to find that balance, right? It usually becomes from a deprecation standpoint of other solutions because it's in an integrated framework. Thanks, Greg.
All right, I'm trying to get my mouse. There we go. So I'm going into the compliance dashboard. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
One of the efforts that's underway right now is a consolidation of these portals. So you will see that there's some information that's in a security and compliance portal and some that's in the compliance portal. And there's an effort, David, I don't know if there's a timeline for that yet in the roadmap, but I understand that this is going to be one of the pieces that changes, is putting it all into a single pane of glass.
Yeah, that's still an ongoing effort, right? As we consolidate across all of our platforms, but they're getting pretty close. So in some of the beta rings, they do have some usage of that already, and it looks pretty good.
Okay. So, and this was the trainable classifiers. I just wanted to point this one out. If it loads pretty quick, if it doesn't, I'll just move on. And the training classifiers would have the ones that we have for profanity, but I could also, and I started to create one this morning, a trainable classifier for our system to go out and just crawl the content that we have across our overall system. I'll come back to this. It seems to be a little slow on that. Okay, so under eDiscovery, there's a core eDiscovery, and this is what what you've seen in the past. You can create a case. And you can see which ones are active, which are in the closing stage. And quickly with this one, what you can do is just say this is going to be David. I'm going to go ahead and save that as a new case. Open the case. Who are going to be the members that I want to have reviewing this? He doesn't have rights, but I'll just put him in for now.
I never have any rights, Greg.
You never have any rights.
No.
And David, here's the case, and I've saved the information. I'm not able to do it apparently, but it's probably because he's not a person that has rights to that. But I can also just open that case and take a look at the case. And then with this is the original piece, right? So I can go ahead and put holds on. This is the way everything used to be. And you can still go out and create a hold on it. So I'm going to go ahead and say David again and choose the locations. These are all the locations that I can go ahead and look at for the system. And then what keywords do I want to do? And I'll just look at Perlman and I'll create a hold on this, right? So I could do it from that perspective. But what I want to do is go back and look at the advanced eDiscovery. And first you get a dashboard. It shows you the different types of cases that you have in play. What I could do is go ahead and create a new case, but I'm going to go ahead at first and just look at the different cases that I have. And I have a contracts one. I could see if I had custodians or I had communication that the custodians themselves were having communication about this. I can see all the mailboxes that were put on hold. In this case, my partner here, I put Chuck on hold. So if I wanted to take a look, I could see I've got one mailbox on hold, how many items are there, when it's been modified, what the status is of that, and everything is on hold now. Now, this is where it starts to become very interesting. So I can start to add additional searches. And they can be very granular as far as what I want to provide for the information. So I'm just going to say SUNY files. I'm not going to put any custodians. I didn't add them. Where do I want this from? Do I want all users? Yes, I want it from all users. So this one's going to take and crawl. It's going to take a few minutes to crawl. I'm going to go ahead and click on next. And for this one, I'll just say SUNY. Do I want to add additional conditions? With the conditions, it can be very granular. When was it received? Did they have attachments for this? Is something in the title that I want to go ahead and have information about? Or, I could go ahead and look at the entire key list and just build a keyword list from here. Click on next, run that. It's running a search, but the search itself is just an ad hoc search. What I can do, if you see the other two here, the other two have been added into a review set, or one of them is successful and added into the review set. With the review set, the custodian can go in and take a look at all the information. So this is at the volume level. So these are multiple searches. They can go ahead and start looking at the information. Then you're combing to relevance, right? And you're looking at particular pieces, and you can make changes to these as you look at it. So I already made changes to this. I can look at the annotated view, and I redacted a couple things, and I did a horrible circle. But if I wanted to, I can go ahead and say, this document, and I know this one was a proposal, and there's some redacted information there as well. I can go ahead and say, what, I'm going to go ahead and remove drawings from there, and I'm going to use a pencil and, put my name very horribly with a mouse. And then I can take these two, for instance, and the action could be to export these or add it to another review set or convert the selected redacted files into a PDF, right? But when I do the export, it's going to export it out to a blob storage. Now, it could be something that's already in your Azure subscription, but it can be by default. Just Microsoft uses a blob storage for this and provides you the ability to go ahead and download it. So everything's there within the system end to end. So what you're seeing is we can go through the custodial pieces. They can communicate. They can go ahead and search through large volumes of data. But then they can go in and start redacting the information or putting key annotations for the lawyer to review. And then export only the relevant information that you have. So to me, this is a huge differentiator between this and, say, A3 with your basic eDiscovery. And David, I didn't know if you had a comment or anything on that.
Nope, keep going. You're doing good. We have about 13 minutes left, so I'd like to leave some time for questions, and then I'll just clarify on A3 and A5.
Sure. So we did that. We went and clicked and did the export. What we're doing is looking at where that data lives and then managing it, as we saw, in a single dashboard. So we can identify the data. Here's where we're looking at multiple vendors. Who processes that data? Well, we might have someone that processes, allows you to do analysis and redact data. What might be a vendor 5 scenario? In this case, everything is using the A5 license and going across the board. So these are the particular areas that it goes into. And then lastly, I've just included a couple animations of what it looks like for custodial communication, what it looks like for looking at the deep processing using machine learning. So there's a lot that you have overall with the eDiscovery capabilities and data loss prevention within the Microsoft suite of products. But this was, built into all the products now. So before, when we looked at just Exchange, there was Exchange eDiscovery, there were, different portal, different access, and it wasn't something that, anyone thought about outside of the Exchange team. Now it's more about, it doesn't matter what the data type is or what, if it's a document or Excel, it's all data. And we need to make sure that we have all of our products be responsible and Microsoft's products be responsible enough to look at the information and provide that eDiscovery. So again, we'll reduce risk by putting the information governance and protection and policies in play. And I venture to say one of the coolest things is just looking at the intelligence, both with the eDiscovery and the machine learning there, as well as in the trainable classifiers that you have through the stack. And then it's a matter of looking with David and team at, what does this do and reduce the overall cost and expenditures that you have in your organization around, IT governance and deployment, as well as what the eDiscovery costs are for those multiple vendors. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to David for a few minutes to talk about the difference of the A3 to A5 licensing, and then open up for questions.
So why don't we do a couple of questions first, because that's even probably more important, and the licensing piece we can get through pretty quick. So I think from Brian. Hey Brian, how are you? Thoughts on why eDiscovery Core would be missing for a global admin even after setting up as an eDiscovery manager? A3 is assigned. That may be a little bit more than I think we're going to get to today, but we can certainly. Do you want to take a whack, Greg, or not really?
And a global admin doesn't mean that you have rights to it. So what you have to look at are the roles. So I had to add myself as a compliance officer. So look to see, a global administrator doesn't give you rights to everything in this case. So you need to have a security or a compliance, and just review the roles and responsibilities in each of those levels, and they'll give you the information you need. So I think it was the fact that you don't have that role assigned to you.
Great, thanks. And then there was a secondary follow-up question, Greg. Can you comment on documents saying to use retention policies should be used instead of older methods like eDiscovery?
It's according, I see a lot more as far as retention in general, instead of putting mailboxes on hold, but you can't eliminate it. It's just something that from a legal perspective, you've got to continue to do. And that's why the dashboard and going end-to-end solution is the best way to do that. So I'd say you can absolutely search through all the content and put retention policies in place, but this is how you're going to actually do the extracts and offload it from IT over to legal custodians.
So in some cases also, I think, Greg, right, when we've taken a look at, whether we do it proactively or reactively, sometimes we get into that forensic stage, right, where we say, hey, what happened in the past versus what should we do going forward? And so for healthcare organizations that are dealing with specific kinds of data that have said, hey, we're going to use Azure Information Protection to classify our data, and we want to have a retention policy around these types of data, or around particular roles, somebody's a CFO, COO, et cetera, that may also have a bit of a bearing in terms of what you're using. So again, eDiscovery oftentimes is, we're looking backwards, where hopefully retention policies are catching a lot of things that we know we need to keep track of. And again, I think it's a little bit more holistic from a retention policy standpoint versus an eDiscovery. Do you agree, Greg?
Yeah, I think so. And it really is going to be a mix and match. So I think there are organizations that do a lot of retention in general now. And, they have that information, but they don't have the ability to go ahead and, just provide a custodial access type of opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions at this point? Fast Track can also help you, or if you have Premier, can, along with Forsyte, can also help you, set up eDiscovery or compliance, or advanced eDiscovery as well. Any other questions that we have from the audience? All right. How was this? Somebody can come off mute if they want. Small enough group. I think we have about 30 people. If you have anything else that you wanted to add, again, I know that there's lots of usage for this, or put something in the comment pane. Was this helpful today? I automatically default to that's a yes if I don't hear anything. Awesome. All right. Well, hey, there we go. Thanks, Mr. Barber. I appreciate it. Where's that chat pane, Teams? Darn it. Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it. So from a licensing perspective, I just want to kind of double back on that real quickly. So I know Kurt probably put a document in the chat pane at some point. So anywhere where it says advanced, you're welcome. Anywhere where it says advanced, right, that is going to be an A5. And so there's a document. Anybody that's interested in it, maybe you could also place that, Kurt, in the pane, or reply all to our email, or I'd be happy to do it. Is Microsoft?
Yeah, I sent it out as an email, so everyone should have that.
The adoption matrix?
Yes.
Excellent. So inside of that adoption matrix, you'll see a couple of things under compliance, right? Legal hold and eDiscovery. If you click on those links on the first tab, they'll take you to a little bit more information. And then if you want to go beyond that, then you'll be able to move to a read more scenario that'll give you both the explanation around legal hold and eDiscovery and what you get inside of A3, and then also the advanced eDiscovery, and then some of the other components in terms of the compliance piece. The data classification as it relates to Azure Information P2 is also in the A5 SKU, but we also do have there's a boiled down version of that. I think is a little less costly, that gives you a compliance SKU, which is just a subset of the A5 SKU without Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, that's also available. Alrighty, so let's see if we have any other questions. Appreciate Kurt, we are moving from E3 for all of our faculty and staff currently. We're also looking at getting some E5 licenses so that we can use the higher level level of teams. All right. I like it, Mr. Barber. Always good information. Anything else from the team? I have about 11:26. I will make this recording available on MS Office Hours, which is a weekly discussion that goes from 4 to 5 every Thursday that has a national group of folks. I see Emily, you're on from our Buffalo store, has been training a lot of people on Teams. Was this interesting, Emily? Have you been through this at this level before?
Yeah, no, this was great. I definitely more information than I'm aware of, so it was a good learning experience for me.
Awesome. We're going to get I think some of our goal is to get some of our stores trained up on kind of helping out with some of the compliance needs. But again, that's a little further down the road. So on that note, thank you, everybody. If you have questions, please reach out to your account manager if you're a SUNY school, who is Josh Reynolds at Microsoft.com, or one of the other of us, the Forsyte team, and we'd be happy to help you, and really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much, Forsyte team, Greg, Jeremy, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Kurt.
Thanks, David.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.